Well, good morning, everyone. This is Celeste Carmichael. I'm a Program Development and Accountability Specialist in Extension Administration, and I'm very happy to be the sponsor of the Campus County Connection webinar series. And today we have a really exciting program, Seafood Safety and Seafood Throwdown. So Antoinette Clemeston and Michael Ciaramella, both with the New York State Sea Grant, are going to be here with us, telling us a little bit about their program and sharing some ideas of things that you can do in your associations. There's on the screen right now is the Campus County course page for this particular webinar, and so I'll just make a note of it here. The recording from today will be posted right on this page, and there's some resources here as well, and the posting should happen by Friday. So you can always go back to these courses. I think there's like 48 of these Campus County Connection webinars that have been recorded and posted from the last couple of years. And the intent is just to help introduce you to some really good connections that show a demonstration of integration between research and extension. So exactly what we're trying to do. And many of your colleagues have been on and a part of this series, so so that we hope that you find it useful. So a couple of housekeeping details before we get started about Zoom. I think a lot of our staff and educators have been using Zoom the last few months. It's pretty easy to use. Here we go. Let me put my video on there. It's pretty easy to use, and there's just a couple things for you to know. One, if you can open your chat, if it's not open automatically, so that you can communicate with us. Take a moment, introduce yourself, let us know who you are, what county you're from, and if you have questions at any time, post your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to them. I don't think that there's too many other things about Zoom to note here. Like I said, it's fairly easy to use. You should be able to make your screen bigger or smaller as needed. And if you have any questions, be it about the technology or questions about the program, just add those to the chat and we will get to them. So at this point, I'm going to turn the program over to Michael and to Antoinette, and invite you, Michael, to share your screen and introduce yourselves to folks.
Thank you, Stella. All right, is it working?
Yes, it is. Yep.
All right.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for taking the time this morning to join us for our webinar to talk a little bit about our Seafood Throwdown. And thank you, Celeste, for inviting us and coordinating this event. We're very appreciative of having interaction with other county extension representatives in other parts of the state. So my name is Antoinette Clemeston, and I'm the Fisheries Specialist with New York Sea Grant. And for those of us who are not familiar, who may not be familiar with Sea Grant is a national program. It's funded primarily through the federal government, and there is a state match that comes with a program. There are 33 Sea Grant programs throughout the entire national network. They're usually affiliated with coastal states and the Great Lakes, and we also have a Sea Grant program in Guam, I think. So the national program here in New York, we have our institution. It's affiliated with Cornell and SUNY system. So the extension part, it comes through Cornell, which is the department that Mike and I are affiliated with. So Sea Grant, we do fund research on coastal issues, and as I indicated, our program also targets the water bodies of the Great Lakes. So for here in New York, for New York Sea Grant, we do have offices throughout the entire state. Mike and I, we're located physically at Stony Brook University on Long Island. So I think that pretty much covers, what we do. Like I said, I am the fisheries specialist. I primarily work with anglers and commercial fishermen on fishing and fisheries related matters. And Mike?
My name is Mike Ciaramella. I'm the seafood specialist for New York City Gran. I've been here for about a year and a half. My background is in marine science originally, and then for my PhD program, I moved into food science. So I work a lot on the food end of things, but also working a lot with aquaculture these days. So I do a lot with seafood safety, nutrition, sustainability, as well as working with some of the budding aquaculture industry down here on Long Island, and to some extent upstate, some of the recirculating land-based aquaculture. All right. So today we're going to share with you a little bit about a program that we've done. I worked with Antoinette on this year. I think she's going to start off with some of the background, the history of what the program is, and then I'll follow up with some of the educational outreach that we've done and used this for.
Excellent. And I guess the way these webinars work, if you have questions as we go along, please type them in, and Celeste will maybe interrupt us and try to make this very informal.
That's right. I'm the interrupter, so.
The great interrupter. That's a good thing. This is, for extension. I know, speaking for this activity, it's one of the, I know personally I like to consider it as a fun activity. So, certainly when we talk about it, we want to keep it very relaxed and informal. So let's get into our webinar. So before I even get into the seafood throwdown, it behooves me to talk about community-supported fisheries, because this is really where the seafood throwdown kind of originated. And community-supported fisheries, it's the name might sound familiar because it is. It's a concept that we kind of stole from the agricultural division, where they do the community-supported agriculture, which are small farms that are supported by they have subscriptions to their shares and they have members. It's the same model. So many years ago, we had a situation, well, it's still ongoing in fisheries, where at certain times of year, for certain fishing communities, there is this challenge of trying to sell their products, and fishermen don't necessarily get the best prices when they have too much land-ins coming in. So there is a non-governmental organization up in Massachusetts by the name of the Northwest Atlantic Marine Alliance, NAMA, I usually call them. And it's an advocacy organization that works primarily with fishing communities. So, as I mentioned, these communities are based up in New England, where there is groundfish. And groundfish is a kind of a unique fishery in that the way it's managed and it operates, the land-ins can be quite large and substantial at certain times of the year. And the fishing communities, they were faced with this challenges of how do we get rid of our products when, it's coming in such high volumes. The prices are so bad from the dealers, what do we do? So NAMA came up with the bright idea of, well, why not borrow this model from agriculture and have these community-supported fisheries? And it's a program that's really taken off throughout New England and further down south in North and South Carolina. But like I said, we borrowed the model. It's the same principles that we apply in fishing. We had to do some tweaking, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. But I guess the important point I wanted to bring across is that this concept was in response to economic challenges that were being experienced. And, like I said, as the bullet point summarizes, there were some benefits by bringing this program to fishing communities. But as we started getting this program off the ground, one of the things that arose as challenges was the fact that for seafood, it's a different beast, for want of a better description, in that there are unique challenges to seafood, one of which is obviously the perishability. How do you get your products out? And once it's off the vessels, you have to get it back into the hands of your consumers, your members in this case, relatively quickly and safely. But one of the biggest challenges that was being observed was that for the public, many of the householders were very unfamiliar with dealing with a whole fish. Traditionally, they were so accustomed to going to the supermarket where their products, their seafood product is already partially processed, whether it's dressed, whether it's headed or fillet, etc. And now that the consumers were dealing directly with the fishing vessels, they were getting the products in a slightly different format. So, for many of these customers, this was like the first time they've ever seen a fish intact with the head, and they really didn't know what to do with it. There was also issues coming out about the whole matter of sustainability. Certain stocks were overexploited, and there was a lot of misinformation. Can I eat fish because of mercury contamination? A lot of misconceptions. So the given this need to educate consumers, one thing that arose was, hey, we should have some sort of a public relations strategy. And I wish I could take credit for the Seafood Throwdown. I really do, but I can't. We give this all credit to NAMA. And I always say this, and as a matter of fact, when we get further down in the presentation, you'll see I do credit them on some of the materials that we do use. But NAMA, they made an investment in this whole, public relations tool and developed, materials to go along with it. So pretty much our Seafood Throwdown, it's really meant to serve as a tool to educate the public about seafood and the benefits of seafood, and also, other sustainability issues that are related to harvest. Okay, so as I mentioned, there are some challenges when we deal with seafood and the general public, and I just mentioned a couple of them previously. But just to reiterate, the perishability and the fact that seafood. The other point there, variability. That's important because unlike farms, agriculture, fishing, it's strictly managed, and there are certain seasons that go with landings, and vessels have very restrictive limits on catch. So those are all factors that does kind of challenge your ability to deliver products. The other thing, too, about seafood is that it tends to, when compared to other protein sources, it is somewhat pricey, as we all know. And so that was also a challenge when you try to develop a community-supported fisheries program, because you have that critical point of, balancing the price that's reasonable for the share subscriber, but is also at a point that the vessels can get a profit. So, we, on the right of the screen, you'll see the strategies that were used to try to address those specific challenges that I just mentioned. I'd just like to just pinpoint the statement about open-ended agreements. What that means is that I just talked about the management of fisheries, and unlike a farm where you know exactly what you're going to be bringing in at what time of year, when we're talking about fishing, because of the way it's managed, we have a situation where it's not that a vessel wouldn't like to give you a certain product, but they might not be allowed to do that at a certain time of year. So what happened was that many times the agreements were kind of open-ended, in that pretty much what the vessel is saying to the subscriber is that you're agreeing, you're buying into this business, and you're agreeing that you're going to take on some of the risks and challenges that we face on a daily basis. One of them being that, my catch might not be what you desire, but you're going to accept what I'm allowed to bring in at that time of year. So that's what we mean by when I use the phrase open-ended agreements.
So Antoinette, I'm going to stop you for just a second and just make sure that I'm understanding right. So a CSF works very much like a CSA, in that a consumer buys into a certain amount of product. Is that what you're in? And they don't always know exactly what they're getting, but there's a little bit of an agreement of what they might be getting, and that there's a need for some education on how to process and keep them the food safe and that sort of thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I'm in central New York here, so away from I would love this actually. I wish there was something like a CS. It's probably only coastal, right?
Well, because it's community-supported fisheries, it's
Right.
yes, it starts out invariably as with coastal communities, again, because there is the challenge of the perishability, and once you start to truck your, when you want to take your seafood inland, then it begs for refrigeration, and
Right.
these are factors that really adds to the cost. And my last bullet there, expense and price point, that's also pivotal. So, and I'll say this, and at the end we can talk a little bit more about how these CSFs have evolved, because they have evolved and they're quite sophisticated. But over time, what we noticed that although the CSF programs were being offered in these coastal communities, the demand was like tremendous in places like Boston, where their port is it's a pretty metropolitan kind of setting. And, when the shares were being delivered, you would have people come into the sites and they would be lining up around the blocks, So the point is that invariably when these programs were launched, what we noticed was that the demand was like tremendous. And, I remember attending a session a few years ago, and one of the challenges that were being faced by these vessels that are having the programs was that they were not prepared for growth, because they started off thinking, well, this is something to supplement the way they sell their fish. But then, once they launched it, the demand was so high that it was like they have to do a whole different business model. And there are many people.
And that's a good transition into the next question that came in, which is what percentage of catch goes or might be expected to go to a CSF as opposed to a big dealer or a bigger company?
Yes. So good question, and I'm glad you asked it. So originally, one of the concerns that we heard from the fishermen was their concern about beginning a CSF or being involved in a CSF might kind of put a strain on their relationship with their dealer. So many of the fishermen, there are some fishermen who do their own direct marketing, but there are, I think the vast majority of the fishermen, they do just give their catch over to a dealer who then handles the retail and distribution part of it. So for those individuals, they were, very concerned that, well, if I start giving a portion of my cash toward the CSF, then maybe the dealers might get mad, and, we don't want to have that. But in terms of a hard and fast rule, I don't think there was any percentage that was put out there. It was, if you are interested in being involved in this, then you can give us as much as you're comfortable doing. The other thing that was suggested is that as a strategy, hey, you could just offer your CSF at the time of year when you have so much of a glut of the fish that you're getting such a bad price from the dealers. Why not put some of that towards a CSF? So, we try to offer as much flexibility to the, the vessel owners that, to make them comfortable. And, I'll say this, many of the fishermen who started on this track, they just saw the benefits, and, they've taken it to a whole different level, and now they're doing a lot of the direct marketing themselves.
Thank you.
That answers the question. So.
Yeah, I think also on Long Island, it's not as structured just yet. So it's very haphazard. There's not a lot. I know there are some fishermen who strictly take their stuff right into the city and go to the city markets. But there's efforts right now that I know we're working with Suffolk County CCE on some CSF projects. So there's not a lot of structure to say like this percentage goes here and that percentage goes there just yet. It's still kind of developing at this moment.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I guess one thing that we noticed too when we're getting into the whole seafood throwdown is that there was the apprehension towards dealing with a whole fish. And I make this point because once you start to get into processing your seafood, that's value added, and that brings up the price. And the whole purpose of this was to try to make seafood attractive enough at a price point that would encourage more people to, buy into the system. But it was interesting when these programs were launched in certain communities where there's like a high population of ethnic, households. Those households have they noticed that there was a noticeable difference in the attitude, because I guess for certain minorities, they were more accustomed to seeing a whole fish, so they didn't have that apprehension of seeing a fish for the eyes, looking back at you. So that was kind of interesting, in of itself. But I guess too, the other thing that we noticed was there was this up and coming and very vibrant local food, farm to table kind of movement that blossomed. And, we here in Fisheries, we like to, be engaged and not be left behind on these wonderful programs. And we said, well, we want to see seafood included in this, because at the time of, the farm to table and local food, it was revolving around, growing, buying local from the farms and, supporting your local business. And we said, hey, fishermen are local businesses too. So, and their seafood is also local. So why should we not be a part of this movement? So that's kind of transitioned me into the seafood throwdown itself. So, we wanted to make seafood a part of that local food dialogue. And, we kind of looked at it and we rationalized it. Well, why shouldn't seafood be considered? We look at the fact that it's local, in that although we had the argument being made that, well, is fish really local if it's coming from, let's say, down Maryland? Yes, fish do migrate, but that doesn't mean it's not local. It's locally caught when it's in our waters and it's, brought here, on shore. So yes, that still is local, and we can't help it if the fish migrates. That's just the biology. Like I also mentioned too, that, we had the issue of the quotas. We put that on the table in the argument just to emphasize the fact that, well, to address the myth that fishing, it's not the Wild West. It is a managed resource. There are rules. Fishermen, they do play by rules, and it's very strict, in several cases. We also wanted to make the case that, if you start encouraging your consumers to buy local, then it also ultimately reduces the carbon footprint. And I say this because here on Long Island, we are in a very unique situation in that our fish is produced on Long Island. It's boxed. Let's say from Montauk, which is the extreme east end of Long Island, which is our biggest port, by the way. So it's brought on shore in Montauk, it's boxed, then it's shipped overland, it's trucked overland to Fulton, which is now up in the Bronx. It's get repackaged, and then it's shipped all the way back to Long Island. And that's how our seafood is produced. So, we wanted to make the case that, hey, if you start buying into these programs, you can reduce that carbon footprint. And more importantly, we also made the case that, hey, fishing businesses are small, family-owned, operated types of structures. It's no different from a small farm. And, also more than for here on Long Island, we have a very rich and strong coastal heritage, and we wanted to ensure that there are, to sing that story, bring it out to the public, and, help to get more support for our businesses. So there are other issues too that came up on the table, and Mike's going to talk a little bit about the health consumption. And unfortunately, for several years, seafood was suffering a bad rap in that there were several news articles that came out that talked about mercury and contaminants, and it was just misrepresented. And I guess, the message somehow got muddled, and, so that was something we wanted to try to address through, education and outreach. We talked about carbon footprint. The other thing too that we wanted to emphasize to the public is the fact that for seafood, it's a very high quality protein. And although the price to meat ratio seems a little bit high in that it's a very expensive product for the amount of protein that you get, the fact is that it's a very high quality, very healthy kind of protein, for consumption. We also talked about the fact that, if you do these programs dealing directly with the vessels, be prepared to get your fish with the least amount of processing, because that's the way to keep down prices. So, subsequently, many of these programs that delivered seafood, it's really just whole fish, just gutted and ice. That's about it you'll expect for, the level of processing. And again, like I said, this is all meant to try to keep the price at a reasonable and affordable cost to the consumer. So finally, we're at the seafood throwdown after all of that. So like I said, I give this program all credit to NAMA. NAMA invested in this, and they've developed toolboxes and a lot of resources. If you go to their website, you can actually get all the information and plan your own seafood throwdown. We did some modifications ourselves to suit our own local needs here. I guess the most significant one is that we made a conscious effort to partner with agriculture. So, in of itself, that kind of challenged us to move away from just having that strict seafood kind of model where, the event is built around seafood. We had to now bring in two different kinds of main competitors, I guess we can call it, main ingredients. So, partnering with agriculture, we now, when we have these events, we're highlighting both a seafood and an agricultural product. So I think we're in our 6th year now. I've lost count. But every year, Suffolk County celebrate Grown on Long Island Day, which is an homage to the local farms. And we were invited one year, maybe 6 years ago, to participate in that event. And obviously, our goal is to bring seafood to the table. And we explained the model, and we talked about it. I will give my credit to the Farm Bureau and Suffolk County Cooperative Extension for buying into the model, and they embraced it and they kind of ran with it. But pretty much what the event entails, and you see it all the time if you watch the Food Channel, it's nothing new. It's just a cooking competition where we have 2 chefs, we have 2 secret ingredients. The good thing about this event is that because it's held at on this specific day, Celebrate Grown on Long Island Day, which features a farmers market, which is organized just for that one day on Suffolk County farms. So we have an on-site kind of market. So what we do is we also give the competitors some cash, $35. Each team gets $35, so they have some time to go shop the market, and then they come back within that time, and then they have an hour to cook, and then we have a formal, judging panel, and pretty much, the judges, they will talk about it, their experience, and declare. I don't like to say winners because they're both winners, which sounds like a cop-out, but it really isn't. Because so far we've never had any losers. All the dishes are very well put together. We do try to attract practicing chefs. Last year was unique in that we were fortunate to have 2 juniors, but they were like professional juniors. They won. There was a sister team. One competed on Top Chef Junior, and the other one was, I can't remember which chef. Master Chef. So we were very fortunate, but even though they're juniors, their cooking skills are like outweighs, like I could never aspire to those levels. There is some preparation that goes into these events. Like I said, NAMA has a handbook, so we pretty much follow the handbook. What you do, you have certain letters that you send out to contact your competitors, and we give them instructions. You ask them to bring their own equipment. We give them cooking. It's set up more like for outdoor cooking, pretty much. With potable water, so we cover the sanitation part of it, and the chefs, they bring their own equipment. There is no electricity or anything like that, so everything has to be like manual. So, and it's a fun day. A part of that process too, because it's education, and Mike's going to go into some of the messages we send out in a little while. I'll shut up soon. But what we do beforehand is we try to have a script developed so that we're not like winging it, because we want to really put out a very focused message at the end of the day. And I guess I'll turn it over to you, Mike, and you can talk about some of that. Thank you.
So before we get into that, so I'm going to go into more the educational outreach and how we use this as an educational component. But we did have one question, I believe, about any other counties having support or supporting CSFs. As far as I'm aware, most of the CSFs in New York are run out of the city. So they're all Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. Even Long Island, we have very little. There was one on Eastern Long Island that's not even operating this year, correct? And I don't know if they're going to start again. So there's a big effort to increase that. But as of right now, I'm only aware of the ones in the city. And at the end, I'll give you a resource that connects you to local CSFs, mainly throughout the East Coast. And like you said, they mainly are local, but coastal. But another thing I did want to bring up is that although this was created as a means of engaging people to enhance fisheries and connect fisheries and fishermen with the community, it can also be used as an educational tool for just simply promoting local. And that can include farm-raised fish. And I know that upstate there are efforts and increases in the number of farm-raised in recirculating tanks. I know there's a big farm that's starting up in the Hudson Valley. And there's potential there for some of the CCE folks up there in those counties to collaborate and cooperate with those industries that are developing to promote and host events like this to get the word out there about the new local products being produced throughout the state, even upstate to some extent. So there's opportunities arising as we progress and as the research and money into aquaculture is increasing and the push for more local production is going forward. So if you have any questions regarding that, we can discuss a little bit of that as well. But right now I'm going to get into specifically kind of the educational outreach, starting with this year's event. It was held on Friday, August 5th of 2016, and our two secret ingredients were fluke and Swiss chard. Okay? And so through this, we use this opportunity, this event, as our main form of educational outreach, and we had two main ways of doing that. The first was more of the engagement throughout the cooking demonstration, and with this cooking demonstration, we're able to touch on topics like familiarizing them with the species, the cooking techniques, and how you can prepare different or this species of fish, but also an opportunity to talk about other species and other qualities they have in other species of fish that are caught locally, and how you can prepare those. The proper handling, so in addressing some of the safety concerns, how to properly handle these fish and prepare them. And also some of the texture and color, so touching on how there's different firmness, different textures, which warrant different kind of cooking styles and different methods. And the main way with that is through this engagement. So in this photograph, you can see we have one of the chefs and their co-chefs there surrounded by folks. So people are coming up, they're very engaged, they're looking and learning through watching. And throughout this, we have an MC, as Antoinette mentioned, that's kind of somewhat scripted. So they're going through and they're talking about the species, talking about the products, and sharing this information with them. And to do that, to allow that engagement there, what we do is produce a set of cards. So these are the MC info cards. They have a variety of different topics. And I'm going to walk you through some of those topics and talk about kind of how the types of things that we can educate people on, as well as some of the offshoots you can go on to not only focus on a single species, but focus on food in general.
So Michael, what MC stands for what?
The MC, Master of Ceremonies, or
okay.
Yeah, the one doing all the talking at any major event.
Gotcha.
So the info cards basically provide them with a platform of information, this knowledge that they can share with the individuals, which then can lead to our second kind of means of engagement, which I'll get to in a little bit. So to start off, we just have a lot of general species information. So we know that seafood The availability of seafood can change throughout the year, so we want to touch on that particular species, let them know when this is available, when they can find it in the local markets, where it typically is coming from. So this is U.S. wild caught, ranging from Maine to North Carolina. So it's a northeast or east coast fish, mainly in the northern states. The skin is edible. The meat is delicate flavor. So kind of the eating characteristics. It's a firm fish with a small, firm flakes that helps us to better explain, the methods of cooking, which we'll get to as well. The white, and also you can move into health benefits. Okay, and we went a little bit more in depth with health benefits by providing the MC with the nutritional facts for that product. And this is an opportunity to really talk a lot about kind of the USDA's dietary guidelines and bringing in some of the key components there. For instance, one of the main topics in there is just diversity in the diet. And this is a great opportunity to showcase that because, there's all that information out there saying, oh, fish is a great source of omega-3 fatty acids. Well, here we're saying there's 1.1 milligram of omega-3 fatty acids in this fish. Okay, so it's not really showcasing and highlighting the fact that this is a great source of omega-3 fatty acids, but that's where you can say, that's the importance of a diverse diet, choosing and selecting a variety of different seafoods to ensure you're still getting those omega-3 fatty acids. But in turn, this is a great choice because it's low in fat, it's high in protein, it's low in calories, so it's a great substitute for some of the more terrestrial meat products that are higher in fats and trans fats and saturated fats, which the current recommendations say to avoid. So it's an opportunity to educate on the nutrition of seafood and the benefits of eating it, but also showcasing the need for a diverse diet in terms of all the foods you eat, but especially the different types of seafood that are out there and incorporating various types of seafood in the diet. You can also use this as an opportunity to touch on some of the sustainability aspects of the species. Okay, so we provide some some of the population status information from FishWatch, which is basically the U.S.'s take on all fisheries in the United States. Okay, so according to the FishWatch from NOAA, the summer flounder are not overfished. They're not subject to overfishing. So they're very well managed. And although there was a decrease back in the 80s and 90s, the changes in management and improved reproduction and survival rates that we're seeing have enhanced the sustainability of the population. And they've seen a drastic increase in the population and the sustainability of that population. Okay, so it's a well-managed fishery that has been reliable. You can also talk about the preparation techniques. So this is easy going into the preparation where you have the actual chefs there demonstrating some of the techniques that you can use. Now this year's showdown was a little bit different because we did have the youth celebrity chefs involved that we didn't actually give them the whole fish. We actually gave them the fillets. So typically you'd give them the whole fish and you'd actually be able to demonstrate, if you purchase a whole fish, this is how you'd prepare it, which is great. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it this year just because of the technical issues with the youth chefs. But in past years and other programs, that's a great way to introduce them to using a whole fish, which is more likely what they may be getting if they're entering into like a CSF model for sustaining or obtaining their seafood. But we also can talk about the ways you can purchase it. So fluke is typically sold fresh. If you're buying local, it's most likely going to be fresh, but it can also be purchased frozen. Because it's a firm textured, small flaked fish, it can be cooked in many different ways: steamed, sauteed, pan-fried, broiled, fried, microwaved, and baked. And then getting into some of the safety aspects is making sure that you're cooking your fish to 145 degrees to ensure that it's properly cooked and you kill and destroy any bacteria that might be on that fish. And then you can go more in-depth into general just seafood safety techniques and how you make sure you're keeping your seafood safe, which is especially important with the perishability aspects of seafood. So the main thing, keeping things clean, making sure you're cleaning your hands, all the utensils are clean, and anything that's going to come in contact with that seafood is kept clean. You want to make sure you're separating, so keeping the raw and the cooked fish separate from one another. And again, reiterating that temperature, okay, because that temperature, that heat step is what's really going to kill any bacteria or any harmful pathogens that are on there and make that fish safe to eat. So cooking that to 145, maintaining that for 15 seconds, and kind of that reiteration help putting that into people's minds to just make them think about it, make them aware that, you know, oh yeah, make sure I need to cook this properly. Also, when you're dealing either with cooked fish or if you're storing some fish after for our leftovers, you want to make sure it's kept cool. You want to keep it under 40 degrees, but the closer to 32, the best. The best is the best. You're going to maintain the freshness and ensure safety for longer if you keep that as close to 42 as possible. Also moving, using your fish within 1 to 2 days of purchase. Okay, unless you buy it frozen, you typically want to use fish when you purchase it, the day of or at least the day after, especially if you're buying from like a local grocery store and not directly from the fishermen. It'd be like, because as Antoinette said, especially here on Long Island, even though we're surrounded by the water and the fishermen are coming in right at the docks there, that fish is trucked to Fulton Fish Market and then back. So by the time you're getting it, it may be a week out of the water. Okay, so it's important that when you're purchasing that fish, you want to use it within 1 or 2 days.
So, Mike, can I just interrupt for a second?
Mm-hmm.
So these are still the MC cards, is that right?
Yep. This is all the information that was provided to the MC. So these are kind of talking points for them.
Okay. So they can be talking with the public and letting them know a little bit more about some of these factoids, right?
Yep.
And so how about the chefs? Are they are they interviewed or do they speak at all in the Seafood Throwdown?
Well, I'll probably let Antoinette talk a little more about that. This year there wasn't a lot. I mean, the MC will interact with them to some bit to ask, okay, what are you doing now? I think it might have been a little different this year simply because they were the youth chefs. I mean, they were only 12, 13 years old.
Sure.
And this was my first year on this Throwdown, but...
Yes, but to answer your question, absolutely. You know, the chefs, like I said, this is one of the reasons why we try to get practicing chefs, because they will talk about, they'll show their techniques, one of the things, too, we try to encourage is participation from chefs who are part of the local food movement. So, you know, with that kind of affiliation, they'll talk about, you know, the fact that in their restaurants, the things that they serve that are local and how they work with small farms, etc. But, yes, it is, you know, an event where we try to engage the chefs and public. In the past, we've also had guests, I guess, speakers too, if we can call them that, you know, affiliated with the industry who can talk a little bit of, you know, more about, you know, another aspect, something different but somewhat related. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had mentioned to you before we started, some of this is, if there's anybody on that's a 4-H educator, will feel a little like produced in New York, and the opportunity to have some of these facts for the person that's, you know, kind of doing the talking, the MC is what a great idea. What a great idea to bring more education into.
Yeah, and that's why I said we emphasize the fact that it has to be scripted, because it takes some planning. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work too. At the end of the day, we're like dead, pretty much. But I also need to emphasize too that although Mike is talking about the seafood messaging, let's not forget that there is the agricultural part of it. So whatever Mike does, somebody else on the ag side prepares similar information, and all of this is packaged and given to the MC. And our MC, you know, in the past, we've always been using our communicator, Barbara Branca, who's done a tremendous job, but she retires in June. So any 4-H person who wants to take up the baton, I'm looking for someone. But, you know, my point, though, is that, you know, your MC may or may not be that in tune to the subject, which is why it's important to have this information available to, you know, to give to that person. Sorry.
Yep. But yeah, on that note, I'm showing you and showcasing all the seafood side of this, but we did have these same cards set up for the Swiss chard with information on Swiss chard for them to share that information as well. But the other aspect that I'm going to get to now, and I guess I could mention it at this moment, is that these are, you know, small talking points. They're not going to spend a lot of time on these when they're talking. They may just bring it up briefly. And because the MC is typically not necessarily someone who knows so much about this, we're providing this information for them to share with the audience. But the second part of that educational outreach is that I was there at a table on the side, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So those who were wanted more information and were interested in more information had the opportunity to come over and get that information. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But other information that we definitely did provide is selecting fresh seafood. And this is a great opportunity. And although we didn't have the chefs at this event fillet the fish, we still had a whole fish there available for people to view, to see, because many folks don't actually associate the actual fish and what it looks like with what they're purchasing at the store. You know, they just see a fillet and they don't know what that came from, what the fish looked like that they came off of. So we do have a whole fish there for them to see, and that goes along with what the anatomy that we talked about earlier. That fish is there for them to look at and see and associate all these different anatomical parts with. But we also go into showing, you know, how do you select fresh seafood? You know, if you're going to a fish market, you want to make sure it's a reputable source. And as far as that, it's kind of hard to define, but the way we kind of explain it is you want it to have a good reputation. So reviews, family, friends, recommendations from people you trust. Okay, that's a great way. Going in, and you can get a sense, is it a clean facility? Does the product look fresh? And using the information we're going to provide next is how you can kind of tell some of that. Also knowledgeable. Start asking questions of the fishmonger, the folks behind the counter. If they seem to have answers and know exactly what you're talking about, you know, that's a great sign that they're a reputable source. If they seem like they're unsure, they're hesitating, they're just seem to be making things up, you know, you may want to consider sourcing your food from somewhere else. Also, proper handling and storage. We're going to take the opportunity here to tell you and talk about some of the proper ways to handle and store seafood, so you can look for that when you go into your local fish market. So when it comes to whole fish, you want to look for bright, clear, full eyes. The gills should be bright pink or red and free of any loose or slushing slime. Okay, so if there's lots of gumps and slime on there, you want to avoid that fish. When it comes to fillets, you want them to be firm and elastic flesh. So if you had someone touch the flesh, you want it to bounce back. You don't want there to be an indent left in that. Well, shiny skin and tightly adhering scales, I apologize, that should be up with the whole fish. But you want them to look moist. So if the fillets in the case look like they're dried out, that's not a good sign. And there shouldn't be a strong ammonia smell. That's a sign of spoilage. Okay. So frozen fish, when you're looking for frozen fish, you want to do packaging that's not ripped or torn. You want to select from below the frost line. So in most freezers, they have a frost line at the top where it's going to defrost. You don't want to pick fish from up there, and there'll be signs of that. You want to avoid the fish with lots of ice crystals within the package, because that's a sign that it's been thawed and then refrozen. Okay. So what are some of the benefits of these local markets? Well, first off, it's an audience that already is interested in the local movement. They're familiar with the benefits of choosing local and what it is. So now we're just trying to introduce a product that a lot of people don't necessarily always think about when it comes to the local movement, just because they're not engaged enough as far as the seafood topic and the issues, especially even though they're islanders. They live on an island, but they're very disconnected with some of these seafood topics, especially in central Long Island, because of that disconnect, because the fishery primarily happens on the east end, and then we have the fish being trucked out west and then just trucked back in and ending up in the grocery stores and the fish markets. And there's very little connection to the community there. So trying to boost that and let them know, like, this is coming right from here, from the New York waters. All right, and so that additional engagement that I talked about was then a lot of these questions, these topics that we have available for the MC, they're going to talk on. Some people, you know, they're just going to come, they're going to engage, they're going to be interested in seeing what's going on. Some are going to be more interested in hearing what the MC has to say and learning from what they're saying. And then there's going to be some more that are really have more questions, want to know more, and that's what this additional engagement, this table we have set up, where I'm available there to discuss any of these topics further with them. Also, we have a lot of resources that are available on nutrition, safety, handling, more on sustainability. All these resources are there and available for them to either spur more topics to talk about, or for them to take home and read on their own to get that information, because there's lots of links and resources available on these different handouts that we have. And through this, as I mentioned, we had that fish there available. Early on, we leave it in front for a demonstration when we reveal the secret ingredient, but then it's brought over to that table so people can come and engage more closely, look closer at the fish, see what it looks like, learn more about the anatomy, where it comes from, and get a more hands-on, one-on-one interaction with us regarding that particular seafood and that species. Okay. So now I just want to touch on some of the hurdles, and one is like the hurdles. The main hurdle that we have as far as this event is concerned is the availability and its presence at the event. We have a very difficult time, primarily because of the time of year and the day that this event is hosted. It's always on a Friday because it's with Gran on Long Island, which they always host on a Friday, and it's very difficult to get the fishermen who have the capability of bringing in their seafood to a market to come in on a Friday because they're all getting ready for the big markets in the city on a Saturday or Sunday. So it's very difficult to have an actual presence. So very few times have there actually been seafood available for purchase at this event, which we're hoping to change in the future because that will really help to engage the individuals and show them that, look, this is local product and you can get it locally. And then the other thing that combating is the hurdles that we've been talking about through education. So there's a lot of misconceptions. There's unfamiliarity. They're not familiar with the species or how to handle it or how it comes in the market. So this is an opportunity to both talk to them about it as well as hand them and give them information on the different ways you handle the different species, you know, to highlight some underutilized species which have been done in the past. So some people call them trash fish. We prefer underutilized, more of a positive term for that. But there are species that aren't very marketable just because people don't understand them. And being able to engage people and get them to better understand these species could enhance that market and provide a higher value to the fishermen. Okay. So some of the outcomes of this event was then we ultimately increased the familiarity with certain products and were able to highlight others throughout the event. You can see the actual handling and preparation techniques. So someone may go in and say, oh, look, I watched them make soup the other day. It looked great. Now I'm going to try it at home. You get recognition for local chefs and restaurants. Okay, so they come in, they take their time, they come in on a Friday and they do this, but it's promoting them and their restaurant. It's helping them spread their views on local fish and local seafood and connecting with a community that already has very strong feelings with that local movement. And it also provides that educational platform both through the overall MCs, providing that educational opportunity as well as the one-on-one with the extension staff who are there at the booths and with our resources. Okay, so then I just want to make you aware of the outreach materials, and if you're interested in them, learning more about them, I'll be giving another seminar where I'll be going into more detail on some of the specific issues surrounding seafood, seafood safety, nutrition, and then highlighting some of the materials that I've produced that are available online that you can go and access and use in your programs and use upstate or anything with anything you do. And I'll be giving that as part of the CCE Extension Conference on April 6th at 11 a.m. So you guys can tune in to learn more about these resources that we have available. Okay, and then I've just provided a couple resources, and I wanted to just talk to you to make you familiar with and aware of what they are. Seafoodhealthfacts.org is a website that has pretty much any information on seafood, seafood health, and it's set up so it's geared towards, there's a consumer page where the consumers can get the information they need. There's a research page where researchers can get information they need. There's also one for medical, so people in medicine can get the more in-depth information they need to make the right decisions surrounding seafood. There's a lot of information on safety, sustainability, nutrition, all on that website. New York Sea Grant has our website, our seafood website, newyorkseagrant.org/seafood is where all these resources that I'm talking about are. So again, you can tune in on the 6th and I'll give you a more in-depth overview of what kind of topics they touch on, what they are, how they can be used, and then go in more in-depth and where you can access them. The Seafood Information Center at Oregon State is a great resource if you're going really in-depth with some of your seafood information, especially if you're moving into helping with safety and regulations. There's a lot of great information on there, ranging from regulations, regulatory to nutrition, a lot of research and things like that. And lastly, there's a website, localcatch.org, which will introduce you to the various CSFs that there are across the country. Okay, so even if there's not one near you, you can look into where they might be, where they're coming about, and this I believe is updated regularly, so there may be one coming closer to your area soon. So it's a great resource to learn more about CSFs and where they're popping up. Okay. A question. Next one on April 6th. That's
So I did put up the registration. The link that I just added is to the registration for the Cooperative Extension online conference, and I'll kind of show that website in just a second. But there's another question. I don't know if you saw that one, Mike.
Yep, just reading through. So inland aquaculture research funding. So yes. Sea grant funding spans the state. It can be freshwater, it can be saltwater. I mean, we have sea grant staff throughout the whole state. There's some up in the Great Lakes. But yeah, the sea grant funding you're eligible to do if you're doing any kind of research that falls within the goals of Sea Grant's current RFP. And aquaculture is definitely in there. Seafood safety is in there. So it doesn't matter whether it's marine or freshwater. It all falls within that. So it can be. Yep. Yeah, and even like me, I work to some extent with some of the folks upstate looking to get more involved with like Hudson Valley Fish Farms. So, you know, we have the capability to some extent to travel upstate to do some programming.
And you work with Mike Timmons as well, is that right?
I worked a little bit with Mike Timmons. Yeah, he does a lot in aquaponics. Mm-hmm. So I've spoken with Mike Timmons and done some stuff with him. Yeah.
All right, well, very good. Thank you guys so much. This is so interesting. The links that are here, I will go ahead and add to our staff page. So let me see, I'm gonna just share my screen. All right, can you see the course page again?
Yes.
All right, so once again, thank you both to Mike and Antoinette. We're going to, when we wrap this up, I will post the recording on this page and add a few more resources to the resource section, including the Sea Grant webpage. I just want to show you a couple of other things that are happening. Campus County Connection webinar series happens on a monthly basis. We usually go from September until June. We skip the month of April for the Extension online conference, since that's kind of like one giant Campus County Connection. In fact, this month we have 20 separate programs that are going to be offered that are program related. There's, I don't know, there's something closer to 45 webinars involved in the conference altogether, but about half of them are program related, very much on the same format as Campus County Connection, and one of them will be Mike's. So, but the upcoming webinars in the Campus County Connection webinar series in May, we have Urban Trees for Changing Climate, and in June, Building Relationships in the New York State craft beverage sector. So between eating seafood and having a craft beverage, we will keep everybody well fed. How's that? Just a couple things to share too. You may have seen the stafflearning.cce.cornell.edu, where the CCE System Conference registration is still up and available. And you know, go ahead and take a look. There are some really fabulous resources and webinars that are going to be offered as a part of this conference. And different this year than in past years, day one is going to be a sort of an all staff, and a number of associations I know are getting together to watch some of the webinars together and engage in some conversation. And then the following 2 days will be kind of a typical format of a conference, concurrent sessions. I also want to mention that in a previous Campus County Connection webinar, we talked about the Wild Harvest Table. So Mo Tidball has a project called the Wild Harvest Table, and there's a lot of fantastic resources and you know, including some video about how to prepare some wild harvest, including fish, and nutritional information and recipes. So I thought that's kind of a really nice connection with the webinar that we offer today. So just bring that up, and there's a recording of that webinar on the Campus County course page as well. So that's all I have today. Mike and Antoinette, thank you so much for your time and sharing. These are great resources, really just so much fun.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Celeste. And thanks for joining us, everyone.
Celeste, I don't think I put it in the presentation, but if you wanted to put my email contact on there, if anyone is interested, they're welcome to contact me with any other questions or anything.
Okay, will do.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. So Mike and Antoinette, if you want to just kind of hang on for a second, and yeah, I'm going to stop recording, but we'll go ahead and just kind of connect for a few more minutes.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.